Hi everybody, Ira Bruce here with Independent News Network, your common sense news channel for independent voters. And as we've already talked about on just about every single video I've done, this is a channel for independent voters who think independently and have common sense about today's politics and current events. So this video is going to talk about the most current event, which is the school shooting that happened yesterday from the recording of this video. Yesterday there was a shooting in Uvalde, Texas. 19 children were murdered, and that's exactly what it was. They weren't killed, they were murdered by a deranged person. And yet, make no doubt about it, this was a deranged person. 19 children and 2 teachers were murdered by this deranged person. So that's what this video today is going to be all about, but it's going to be about solutions, right? So let's talk about the topics and the issues on hand about this school shooting. Look, this has happened now several times. And it keeps happening, and everybody's saying, you know, this has to end, this has to end. We have the president that came on last night talking about the issue at hand, but he quickly turned political on this tragedy. This tragedy had no place for politics. It really should have been the president consoling the nation, not turning it political, okay? Now, I've watched both networks. I've watched Fox News, I've watched NBC. They each have a little twist, their own little twist. As we know, as independents, the typical news channel, cable news channels, NBC, ABC, MSNBC, CNN, all of those are left-leaning, okay? To the Democratic side, obviously. Fox News, Newsmax, they're right-leaning, and they have their own take on things. And us as independents kind of have to walk down the middle of that road, and we have to kind of make our own decisions on what we think, and we vote our conscience based on that information. I've watched both news channels about this tragedy. Everybody wants to praise President Joe Biden now for turning it political and talking about gun laws and gun restrictions, and when are we as a country, when are we as a country going to change, he says. When are we going to do something about this? He wants to ban guns. Democrats want to ban guns, right? Fox News says something has to change. Something in this country has to change. So those two ideologies are the same, but the solutions are different, right? Something does have to change. You don't hear Fox News, you don't hear, they're no different. Yes, something has to change, and that is our topic for today's video. I agree. We all agree as a country, something has to change, okay? In my opinion, gun restrictions, our right to bear arms, the Second Amendment, does not need to be called to play here. Yes, a gun killed 21 innocent lives, but it was some deranged individual who pulled the trigger on that gun. Let's talk about the Second Amendment for a minute. Why did our founders put the Second Amendment in the Constitution, the right to bear arms? Why did they put that in our Constitution? That's what makes our country different from any other country around the world. they're quick in the news to report how we don't have these kind of school shootings and mass shootings and stuff like that in other countries. And other countries have, ban weapons, right? Ban guns and stuff like that. But we, as the most powerful nation in the world, that's what sets us apart. That's what keeps us as citizens safe, are the right to bear arms. So there's several different things that we need to talk about here, okay? Number one, why do we have the right to bear arms? We have the right to bear arms to protect ourselves, to protect our loved ones, to protect our family, and to protect our property. That's why the forefounders gave us the right to bear arms, for our own protection. But number two, there's another reason why our forefathers, our founders, gave us the right to bear arms. That's to protect ourselves from being oppressed and taken over by our own government. Now, I'm not calling for militia. I'm not calling to go out and do anything from a offensive position. Guns, in my opinion, are for defense, right? That's what guns, to defend ourselves from defense, to defend ourselves not only from criminals, from people who want to hurt us, from people who want to steal from us, who want to break into our homes and take our possessions, but it's also protect us from our government. Because look, folks, think about it. Communistic China, their citizens don't have a right to bear arms because that country wants to control every one of those citizens, and those citizens cannot defend themselves. Russia, they're a communistic country. You don't have the right to bear arms in Russia either. Because why? Because that government wants complete control over their citizens. Their citizens can't defend themselves from their government. And that's why they've been taken over. And we have a movement in our country. That progressive movement is trying to control us, is trying very hard to get the government to enact a socialistic government. And so what happens after socialism? Marxism. It's a natural progression, people. It's a natural progression. You start out as a socialistic country. Then you end up as a Marxism country. Then it's communism. That's the natural progression of what happens in countries that you see now, like China and Russia. North Korea has always been that way. But this is what we don't want to happen. And there's two things that are in the way of us, we the people, getting taken over by our federal government. That's number one, the right to vote. That is the most precious right that we have, the right to vote, to keep laws and to keep politicians from turning this country into a socialistic country. We are a capitalistic country. That's why we're the greatest nation in the world, because of our capitalism. We can't let these progressives change our country. This very small, tiny, minute amount of voters and people in law in Congress trying to change us into a socialistic. They're trying to get a movement going. There's people like George Soros out there who are trying his best to turn this into a socialistic country, a Marxist country, a communistic country. There are those people that want control. Look, folks, there's a book out there, 1984. Have any of you read this book? Very scary. It's very scary. Because if you think about it, this country could easily head in this direction. A big brother taking over. All right, already they tried to do the ministry of truth. That's where that word comes from. 1984, the ministry of truth. Big brother trying to take over. That's what they would like. That's what those progressives would love in this country, is to have a socialistic, Marxist, communist country here. Look, I say to those people, if you don't like the capitalistic ways of this country, go on to Russia, go to China, leave this country, go where it is that you want to try to change this country into. But leave this country alone. And we, as the independent voters, we're the ones at the helm. It is going to be up to us, because you have a 50-50 split of Republicans and Democrats. That's why I'm making this channel, because you see nothing for independents. But we, as independents, are the ones that are going to make or break this country and what goes on in this country. Going back to the gun laws. So they want to ban assault weapons. What are assault weapons for? First of all, they want to say, the Democrats want to say, assault weapons, you can't go hunting with assault weapons. Assault weapons are designed for what they're designed for protection, for defense, to defend ourselves. We know assault weapons aren't to go hunting with, obviously. But their argument is, you can't go, you can keep and bear arms, you can have arms, to go hunting, but it's a smoke screen, folks. So right away you're like, yeah, you're right. That's what I was thinking. Yeah, you're right. We don't really need assault weapons. Well, we need assault weapons. Why? To protect ourselves. That's what we need assault weapons for. Again, to protect family, loved ones, property, to protect ourselves, right? That's what they're designed for. That's what they're made for. And they are to protect us from our government, should our government try to come for us and take us over, folks. Again, this is not a movement to go on the offensive against our federal government. It's not. But I'm just saying, if our federal government tries to come after us, we need to be able to defend ourselves. That's what keeps us from going into a communistic state. Okay, so we need to protect our rights by any means necessary. And those two rights, the right to vote and the right to keep and bear arms, to protect ourselves not only from criminals, but from our federal government trying to come and take us over and turn us into a communistic country. That is what that Second Amendment is for. So banning the Second Amendment is not the answer to these tragedies, to these school shootings, to the shooting that was at the supermarket up there in Buffalo, New York. That's not the answer. What is the answer? That's what Fox News is asking. What's the answer? We don't know what the answer is. But it's not to take away our rights to keep and bear arms. The answer, in my opinion, is to reinstitute mental institutions. Folks, we haven't had this problem. When I was growing up in the 60s and the 70s, 50s, 60s, 70s, there were mental institutions that deranged individuals would go to. They were placed in these mental institutions. What have they been doing with these deranged people? Now they've been putting them in jail. Jail is not where these disturbed people need to be. These people need help. They need psychiatric help. They need psychologists and psychiatrists to help them. They need meds. They need medicine to help and keep them under control. That's what these people need. Think about it. The homeless population. You've heard on the news lately, there's homeless all over the place. There's homeless encampments all over the streets, all over the country. Why? Obviously, these are mentally imbalanced individuals that need help. And they need to be taken off the streets and put somewhere where they can get help, where they can be productive members of society. These people are not being helped. The only way they're being helped is if you go to California. They're doing away, they're banning these laws. What they're doing is they're helping them do drugs, okay? So I would say more than half of them are drug addicts. They have no place to go for help. These homeless people, these drug addicts. We don't need to facilitate the ability in these safe zones for them to go shoot up, to give them hypodermic needles, to give them drugs. That's craziness, people. That's crazy. That's insanity in itself. Allowing these homeless people to pitch a tent wherever they want to pitch a tent and shoot up and be deranged. Folks, we sent $40 billion to Ukraine. Now look, I'm all for helping Ukraine, right? They were a democracy and Russia's over there trying to take them over. But we don't need to be putting people in jail. We don't need to be giving them syringes and kits to do drugs, crack pipes. You hear about it all the time on the news if you listen to the news. That is not the solution either. What's the solution? We need to reestablish insane asylums. We need to establish mental institutions. There's people that are mentally deranged that need help. And these are the people that are out there killing people. Now, thank God these homeless people have no money to go out and buy a weapon. You do hear about them getting a knife and going and stabbing people on the subways and out on the street. Homeless people, these mentally deranged people. And folks, you have to be mentally deranged if you're living on the street, if you're living in a tent, right? I mean, come on, let's just think about it. Let's call it, it is what it is. They're drug addicts, yes, but drugs have affected their mind, their mental ability to be a productive member of society. We have to be able to help these people, not condemn these people, not to assist these people to continue with their drug addictions. We have to reestablish mental institutions, mental hospitals, a protocol. There needs to be a congressional panel put together and funded on how we are going to reestablish mental institutions, insane asylums. There are people that can just never be helped. Unfortunately, there are insane individuals that can never be helped. There are very dangerous people who need to be on medication, right? That is the way. That is the way that we're going to solve this problem. Because again, think about it. Have you heard about mass shootings in the 60s? No. Why? Because we put all these deranged individuals in institutions. Now, why did we get rid of these mental institutions? Well, here's something here that we can look at. So the AMA Journal of Ethics, how did we get here? Deinstitutionalization as a policy for state hospitals began in the period of the civil rights movement when many groups were being incorporated into mainstream society. Three forces drove the movement of people with severe mental illness from hospitals into the community, from these hospitals into the community. The belief that mental hospitals were cruel and inhumane. Okay, so let's talk about that. If that's the way it was back then, if indeed they were cruel and inhumane, we are in the 21st century now, folks. We can go ahead and we can put together a system where these hospitals are not cruel and inhumane. We can have an oversight committee or an oversight government that will make sure that these mental hospitals are no longer cruel and inhumane. Because look, I agree, that they probably were. They probably were cruel and inhumane. I know there were individuals that were locked away and can never get out. There needs to be a system set up with a set of rules where if people can get better, if they can get mental help, psychological help, they can get medication to help them. And it's up to their families at that point when they get released from the hospital to say, hey, yes, they stay on their meds, they're fine, everything is fine. Or their families can say, hey, they're off their meds, they're not thinking right, they're a danger to society, they need to go back in, okay? So there needs to be a system set up, a system in the mental health of this country. And that's why we have these problems. It's not guns, it's deranged. Can we all agree that it's deranged individuals that are pulling the triggers on these guns? Now, this last guy, from my understanding, had a long gun. He didn't even have an assault rifle. He had a hunting rifle. Yeah, with many magazines, okay? Look at the damage he did. Look what he caused, right? It was horrible. But let's look at the individuals. The individual that did the shooting, killed the 10 people in the supermarket just a few weeks ago up in Buffalo, New York. He was a deranged individual. There is a common denominator here. The common denominator, folks, who is ever listening, are these mentally deranged people. It's not the weapons, it's not the guns, right? It's these deranged individuals that need help. And that's what we need to do. There needs to be a call for Congress to go ahead and have a panel and talk about reinstituting mental institutions, mental hospitals, get these people the help that they need. And that includes all the homeless people. Look, out there in California, they're buying apartment buildings, they're buying hotels, and they're just putting these individuals up in hotels with no help. We have to help these people, and they wait for them to go ahead and commit a crime so they can put them in jail, and they're not even putting them in jail anymore, right? There's no cash bail. They're easy on crime. So these people now aren't even getting put in jail anymore. There is a call to action to help these people, these mentally deranged people, right? And the homeless. Let's clean up this country. Let's clean up this country. Let's establish a mental hospital, mental institutions all across the country, in every town, in every city. Up here, it says, if you read this, the Journal of Ethics, the AMA, I just encourage you people to please go to this website. And if you go to this website, then you will see. We'll come on down here. It says, it'll tell you. I mean, there's a lot more involved on this website. Just search AMA Journal of Ethics, deinstitutionalization of people with mental illness, causes and consequences. You really need to read this, because this is the history of what happened and why we are where we are today. It says here, 6.3% of the population suffers from severe mental illness, defined as long-standing mental illnesses, typically psychosis that causes moderate to severe disability of prolonged duration, right? So, given that the number of adults 18 and over, now the last two shooters in this instance were 18 years old. But there's roughly 14.8 million people with severe mental illness. Folks, we just can't let that continue. They need the help that they need. They need to get the help that they need. We don't need to lock them up in jails. Not at all. If they have a drug addiction, they need to be put into a drug program to get them off drugs, to put them on medication or whatever. There needs to be different aspects to this mental, the criminally insane, that needs to be, those people need to be locked away and helped, right? It used to be that these prisons were the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Not any longer. All they do is house people until they do their time for the crime and let them out. And then they reoffend. But most of them have a mental illness. So we need to go ahead and get these talking points going. Let's go ahead and get out there and spread the word. Let's go ahead and get mental institutions reestablished in every city around the country and get help for these people. Get these people off the street. Get them the help that they need. Get them the drug programs to battle their drug addiction, to battle their mental illness. This is the solution to what the problem is that we have today, not gun control. There's an old saying that says, if you outlaw guns, what? Only outlaws will have guns. If you outlaw guns, only outlaws will have guns. Outlawing guns is not the solution. Mental institutions, treating the mentally ill, treating the deranged people that are pulling the trigger on the other side of that gun. So we all don't need to be penalized because of these deranged individuals. We need to be able to protect ourselves. These deranged, mentally ill people who are doing this, they don't need to be killed by law enforcement. They need to be put in mental institutions, and money, a lot of money spent not just housing these people. We need to get them the professional help that they need, get them free medication that they need, and start helping these deranged individuals who are causing these problems. That's all I got for today. So I want to thank you so much for watching this video. If you're not yet a subscriber, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. We'd love to have you as a subscriber. Let's keep the dialogue going. Please help me go ahead and inform the nation about some of the common sense knowledge that we as independent voters are trying to spread throughout this country. Hit that subscribe button and hit the notification button as well, so each and every time we make a new video, you'll be notified. And let's go ahead and make comments on the bottom. Let's start this dialogue going, and let's get a movement going. Thanks so much for watching this video, and we look forward to seeing you in our next video.